Good morning, Standard 10 students. Today I am going to teach you The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen. Now, before I teach you, I'll just give you the summary of this story so that you will be able to understand while the lesson is in progress. Okay. The Little Match Girl is a sad story about a miserable young girl. The story begins on a rough, cold winter evening. The wind was swirling, the sky was darkening, and the snow was coming down. It was the last evening before New Year, and it seems that the people were preparing to spend a nice evening in their homes with a lavish celebration. In this chill and darkness, a poor little girl strolled who was bareheaded and bare feet. She was wearing her mother's slippers, but they were bigger than her size. So while crossing the road in a hurry, she lost one of them, and the other one was stolen by a boy. So her feet were red and frozen due to the cold. Now remember, it was New Year's Eve. Okay, it was very, very cold. The snow was falling and darkness was approaching. And a poor little girl was seen on the streets. She was bareheaded, means she did not have proper clothing on her head. Like we wear mufflers, monkey caps, or warm woolen caps to keep our head warm. She did not have that. And she was bare feet. Now she was bare feet means when she left the house, she didn't wear a pair of slippers, but those slippers had belonged to her mother. So her size of her feet were much smaller than the slippers. So obviously, when she was running across the street, those slippers fell off, came off her feet. Now she was trying to avoid because suddenly two carriages were speeding across. So one slipper got lost, one odd got lost, and the other was taken by a boy who refused to give it back, and he said that he will use it as a cradle when he had children of his own. And now, since it was New Year's Eve, the people were still celebrating Christmas season and they were preparing themselves for the new year. So they were cooking delicious food. The aroma or the smell was reaching the girl when she was on the street. Now she was on the street in order to sell matches. Okay. So now you have to remember it was New Year's Eve. Snow was falling. It means signifies a severe winter. And a poor girl on the street not wearing proper clothing to keep herself warm. And because of not having anything on her feet had turned red and blue, means it was frozen cold. So you could imagine how cold it was and how cold the girl had experienced because she did not have any proper clothing to keep herself warm. Okay. This little girl is out in the street to sell matches as ordered by her strict father. So, why was the girl out on the street? The girl was out on the street in order to sell matches. Her father had strictly given orders for her to sell the matches and to bring some income to the house. Now, here I'll just explain about the pathetic condition of children those days during the Victorian period when there were children who were orphans, children who were from very poor families. They were exploited by the aristocratic people and perhaps the middle class people. Now, these children were forced to work in order to fulfill their basic needs, or like a strict father would send his children to go out to work and bring money home. So many of these children were exploited. And like when you read stories like David Copperfield, Oliver Twist, there you will find that how the children suffered, how some of them were put into orphanages. They run away from there because the food was not very good. They had to do a lot of work because making a child work means cheap labor. So, and our author, Hans Christian Andersen, he also had a very sad and unhappy childhood. So, in this story, he's trying to bring out how a miserable child is trying his or her level best to survive. And many of these children, they don't make it. Most of them die due to hunger, due to cold, severe cold, or maybe they die in prison. So it's a very sad story that we are going to now learn. The Little Match Girl is one of those sad stories, and it is very touching, especially when those who have had a very sad and unhappy childhood life. Okay. She could not manage to sell any since morning, but could not return home. Now the little girl was unable to sell matches. Nobody was buying matches. And now she did not want to go home. The reason for not going home is, now this is very important. There are two basic reasons why the girl, in spite of not selling any matches or did nobody gave her any penny or any money. Now sometimes what happens when people buy bouquets or buy something down on the street, they're so happy with themselves, they donate or they give money on charity or malice, not on malice. Like they give money like tip because they are in a happy mood. They want the person who's selling these things on the street should also enjoy the festival. So nobody gave her. Now it was time for her to go home. But she was reluctant to go home. She did not want to go home because she was scared that her father would beat her up. And that was one of the reasons why the girl did not venture out to go home empty handed. She knew what treatment she would get if she went home without any money. The second reason for her not to go home was her house was not in that condition that would protect her from the severe cold. It was as bad as the weather that was prevailing outside. It was very cold, snow was falling, and in her house, condition was such there were no proper roof, no proper window to stop the cold wind from entering the house. So it made no difference to her whether she was on the street or whether she was at home. So the basic reason for her not going home was she was scared of a severe beating by her strict father. The second reason that her house was not in that condition to prevent the cold wind from entering it. It was as good as or as bad as the weather condition outside. So she decided to remain there. Maybe somebody may come and give her some money or you know, buy some matches. So that is the reason why she was reluctant to go home. Okay. Now she was lured by the appetizing smell of food spreading from her house. So while she was there on the street, she could get a smell of delicious food being cooked. Now, why I will end it till here because now part by part I will read and explain. Okay. So the first part I think is very clear now. But it was a New Year's Eve. It was very cold. Snow was falling. Okay. And darkness was approaching. And a little girl was on the street who was a very poor girl who had been sent by her father to sell matches on the street and to bring home some money. But the girl was not fully equipped for the winters. She was bareheaded, nothing warm on her head, neither on her feet, neither was her clothing was suitable to keep her body warm. She wore her mother's slippers that got lost, and her feet was frozen and it turned red and blue. And she was reluctant to go home because she was afraid, was very scared that she would get a beating by her father, as well as the house was not in that condition to protect the cold winds from coming inside. So it was as bad as the weather prevailing outside. In the next class, I shall go further up. Today, I shall be sending some model question and answers of the Patriot. Okay. So I would request you to write those model question and answers. It will help you for the boards. That is based on the board pattern. Thank you.